We'll call to order the regularly scheduled board meeting of USD 464 for Monday, December the 12th. This time, if you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have the elementary won't be able to make it tonight because of illness on item 1.4 in presentations, and then action item 5.2, the furniture, we don't have the bid yet, so I would move that we amend the agenda, removing item 1.4 and item 5.2. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried. All right, we'll jump right in then, and that puts alternative school at the top of the list. Boy, you got lucky there, didn't you?
Well, I like the way this lined up. Appreciate that. I'll let Tanya get hooked up here for our presentation. Let's see. That looks like it's. There we go. Okay. Well, we appreciate the time tonight. As always, appreciate you guys hearing us out and kind of seeing what we have to present to you guys. We want to speak on our alternative high school program tonight, or the potential of bringing one of those to USD 464. We do have three whys that we want to talk to you about, and Tanya's going to speak to graduation and dropout rate and state accreditation here in a second. But I just wanted to kick off with student need. And to steal a little bit from dropout rate, so the last couple of years our dropout rate has been between 2.5% and 3%. And so when you look at that, you're looking at 15 plus kids at Tonganoxie High School that are not being successful, 15 a year, that are not being successful with the traditional graduation path, with the traditional courses that we offer, the traditional day-to-day routine that we offer. And that's a significant group of students in my eyes that might be exiting Tonganoxie High School or entering our community for adulthood and not have the most basic employability status that they need, and that's having a high school diploma. And so, you know, you can think of any scenario that you want to, and we have those kids at Tonganoxie High School. When I say think of any scenario that puts kids at disadvantage of earning a high school diploma. We have students that are victim to sexual abuse at home. We have students that are in homes where the parents or the adults that are in charge of the home have drug addictions. We have students that have had traumas in their life, maybe just losing a loved one, that makes it to where when they get to school, really the only thing they care about are finding valuable relationships where they can trust people. And so I could keep going on and on down that list, but we have students in our building that have different needs in life. And because other needs outweigh their academic drive, they end up on a path where they're struggling to be successful, and they're ending up, like I said, leaving Tonganoxie High School without the most basic thing for success in life, which is a diploma. And so that's why we feel like that need has grown to the point at Tonganoxie High School where an alternative high school program is a need. So with that, we'll jump to the next slide, and I'll let Tanya kind of talk about the other two needs.
So you'll notice, you've seen this information before, our dropout and graduation rates and how that affects accreditation. So as you look over the past several years, the 4-year cohort for dropout rates has increased. So we've increased the number of dropouts every year. USD 464 dropouts are in the red and the state is in the blue. So we've got a trend line, and our trend line is not looking good. So our 4-year cohort for graduation rates, our graduation rates are going down, which should be going up. In order to maintain full accreditation, and you know we're going through our accreditation this year, it's the KISA cycle, 5-year cycle, and this is our year to be accredited. One thing that would hold us back on accreditation is our graduation rate. For a school district to be fully accredited and maintain that full accreditation, a district must be showing growth or maintain greater than 90% graduation rate. Right now we're currently at 88.2 and we're decreasing. So we do not meet either factor. And so we've been speaking with different groups, KSDE, Greenbush, and looking at what we could use to remedy that. And one of those is by providing an alternative program for our high school students that would help us decrease our dropout rates, increase graduation rates, and then therefore be fully accredited for graduation.
Can I ask, sorry, when it says growth, does that mean student body headcount growth, or
No,
what's?
growth in graduation rates. So if we
Okay.
started low and we're growing each year, progressing toward the 90%,
Gotcha.
then that would be considered growth.
So we have a little bit of local data with the graduation rate and dropout rate, but I was curious, other schools that have implemented and all. So we're not the only community that has this issue, right? Like lots of communities that mirror us or our size or in the area have been seeing the same trend over the last 10 to 15 years. And so I reached out to 2 other high schools in our league that I knew had alternative high schools that implemented them recently, and was curious on their data, just so we could see the impact that alternative high schools had in other schools. Now, Pale and Ottawa have tracked it differently, but if you look at Ottawa, they implemented theirs, and really it was the 1920 school year, but 20 was the graduation part of it. And so in that school year, they had 13 participants in their alternative high school. Out of those 13 students, 8 of them graduated and 5 of them still ended up dropping out. The following year, they had 15 participants. Out of those 15 participants, 12 of them graduated and 3 of them still ended up dropping out. And then this past school year, in 2022, they had 25 participants. The program grew. 24 of them graduated or are on track. Their program now includes students that are sophomores or juniors and aren't quite yet to graduation, but they're on track. And they only had 1 student drop out last school year. And then if you look at Ottawa, go back to 2011, which is when they implemented their alternative high school program, you can see where their graduation rate was at. You can see why they took the path to implement an alternative high school. And I'm not going to read every number off there, but you can just follow that down throughout the years and see the clear trend of that going up and up and up, and averages increasing up to the upper 80s, low 90s, and then this past year they had a 96.3% graduation rate, which is a little bit of an outlier. That's a big jump up, but you can still see the trend.
When did Ottawa start this?
2011. So that was the year, and then they've got a couple different programs. In 2009 is actually when they implemented a behavior program. They had a lot of extreme behaviors there, and so they had a behavior program that they implemented in 2009, alternative high school in 2011. I don't know the exact year, but right around there, they also started a virtual program. So they were offering a full virtual program to some of their students. But if you talk to their administration, they would say that the alternative high school has been the primary factor, the primary reason that their graduation rates have increased, while those other 2 are also a factor, those other 2 programs.
So they've had it for 11 years.
11 or 12
is
years,
Is
yeah.
the target 90% then?
Target overall for
For
graduation
you
rate?
mean do they have the same target of 90% then?
So yeah, the state sets that for
Yeah.
graduation, yes.
Yeah, I mean that shows up, down, all. I mean, and then 2 of the top 4 years is where we're at right now, right? 88%.
Yes.
So out of the 11 years, they hit their target twice.
But is this of that program? This is of the alternative school, and the 90% that number that you need to be accredited as a district is of your whole entire student.
No,
body.
this is their entire student
that
body.
is the
This is their entire student body's graduation rate.
Oh,
Well, the target for accreditation is at 90% or greater, or growing toward that.
Yeah.
So as long as you're working toward or growing toward or increasing.
It looks like prior to pandemic, we were on the upward trend. Was that, if you go back to that slide? I mean, the graduation rate was, in 15, 16 was almost 92. Next year it was almost 94. The year after that, it was right at 96. And then COVID hit and it dropped. Is this,
So COVID would have been 1920. So 18,
20?
19 would be the year before that.
what happened from 18 to 19?
I wasn't here,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
Where was that? That's
Because
a good
the
question.
trend was actually stronger before 19 up, then the trend is now down because we were up last year and slightly down now.
So we posed that same question to our counselors who were here during that time, just to try to get some perspective. And you aren't in our building, so you don't know. And we actually pulled a yearbook, and they went through and looked at all the kids, and they were able to pinpoint 10 kids that had very unique and traumatic experiences from that class. So
In 1819.
right, that could be just a fact, some strange anomaly that happened in that year with a lot of kids going through trauma.
Right.
Then how does it explain that it's consistently now for the past, the 2 years following that?
That year, that certainly doesn't explain it, other than why 1819 we had the big drop.
Right.
But I certainly, in my time here, which would be 2021, and in the past 2 years, which aren't reflected in this yet, just looking at the dropout rate and what percentage of our population that is, again, we're looking at around 13, anywhere from 13 to 18 kids per
So
year.
what's 21-22? What was the 21-22 data?
We don't have that. When we do our dropout graduation reports, they wait till after the September 20th count, then we do the dropout graduation report based on that, and then they won't appear in their reports back to us until after January.
But don't we know how many kids dropped out?
Well, I could tell you, but there's a formula that goes into this. There's 4-year cohorts, there's 5-year cohorts, and there's numbers if you use the 7 through 12 data or the 9 through 12 data. I usually just wait until I get the state reports. We know those individual kids, but to give you an accurate percentage, we wait for the state reports.
But is that number fewer than previous or more than previous years,
So
or
one
the
thing that's
same?
tricky with that is like a kid could drop out during their sophomore year, and then it doesn't count against us until their senior year. So like those kids, we know who dropped out last year, but there could be kids that dropped out their freshman or sophomore year that we weren't here for to know that. So we
But
have to
it doesn't get counted against
Right.
us until it's the year they should have graduated.
their graduation cohort.
Now, I'll be honest, our counselors do have a list of
Yeah.
the kids that dropped out last year. I don't know the number off the top of my head. I want to say it was 8 or 9. And that could be, we have a student that dropped out last year that's actually come back this year for Success Center, which is something we'll talk about a little bit more. But I don't have the number off the top of my head of that, so,
Do we have kids dropped out this year already?
yes.
Do we know the number?
One.
I was gonna say 3, but I have to go back and maybe I'm thinking of one that came back, but, so.
So how do you have the dropout rates? So the dropout rates are going up from 15 to 18, but the graduation rate is as well. How does that?
That's just all a part of the state formula. There's a formula that factors in students who have moved away, come back. They also factor in students who leave us but go to other states. That don't get, with a Kansas kid, they can be picked up in another district and we know exactly where they went. In another state, it doesn't flow through the Kansas kids system, so they're a little more difficult to track. But we have to send those reports to the state when we get those as part of our dropout graduation summary. So they have different formulas that they plug into this based on number in, number out. They factor in also those students who drop out but then come back, and it depends on their cohort year also.
So if a kid leaves and goes to another state, that's really not considered. I mean, it doesn't technically have to be a dropout. I mean, we
No.
just don't know what they did.
If we can prove to them that we have received a records request
Mhm.
on that student, then they don't count as a dropout. But if we've never received a records request, they are a dropout.
Okay, and so what year's data for graduation rates are we using for our year of accreditation? Are we using the 21-22, or are we using?
We're using, actually there'll be a total of 6 years.
Okay.
Because COVID, we had a gap year
Mhm.
where we didn't take a pause.
Mhm.
So there'll be 6 years of data that will be used for that. And this will be our year 2 accredited.
I think there's questions with the data, but let's kind of keep moving through maybe the presentation and see where we're.
Well, we kind of spoke about this a little bit at our previous board meeting, but over the last year, in this year, we established the Success Center, which is kind of our way to handle some of the issues that our students are going through. We have some students who have extensive trauma that need a separate setting. We have students who have severe anxiety, who don't want to be in a large class with 20 students. We have students going through all sorts of things and who have proven that they have not been successful in the traditional classroom. And previously we were operating on a system of credit recovery, and this year we've established the Success Center in a hope that the teacher from that in that classroom can establish relationships with this student, with all these students, and guide them through their coursework that they're doing through a credit recovery program through Edgenuity. And some of these students, they're in Success Center, which is one classroom with the same set of peers throughout the day, but they do go out and they go to different elective classes that they're interested in when available. You can look at our data that for the last 3 years here, and the yellow and green years are years that they were in the traditional classroom for most of the day. Some of them did do some credit recovery during the day as well, but primarily those students were in the traditional classroom. The purple is this year when they're primarily in the Success Center. And if you look at the bottom there for credits earned, in this school year, the students in our Success Center program, so far in just this one semester, have earned 65.25 credits. Those same students last year, so in 2 semesters, earned 68.25 credits. So we are almost double, almost through the full year of credits just in this one semester. So you will notice, though, if you look at the attendance data, our attendance data, it's slightly, well, actually it's not better because this is just one semester, which is 113, unexcused absences. And then last year, you can see that in total, those same set of students had 148 unexcused absences. And the ones that have no data in there, that data probably would be higher, but those students came from different districts, and so we don't have that attendance data for them. You also will notice that our data for the discipline this year, these students have had 6 discipline referrals in this semester, whereas last year they had 14 discipline referrals in the entire year. So we're still noticing discipline referrals. I will say to that primarily the discipline referrals that we have had this year with this group of students have been far less severe than what we encountered last year. And also those discipline referrals have primarily happened, actually all of them have happened when they're in gen ed classrooms and they're not in Success Center, when they're out with electives.
Another just point of discipline data with this is, and it's kind of like I'm saying it, I'm knocking on wood right now as I say it, we have had no expulsion hearings this year at the high school. This would be, since I've been here, the first semester that we have not had at least one expulsion hearing. And I can't prove it, it's just anecdotal, but I do believe that part of the reason we have not had any expulsion hearings is because these students that have had, 3 of the students, you don't know who they are, I know who they are just looking at the letters, but 3 of them were expelled last year and have now made it through this semester and earned credits towards graduation. And I believe that Success Center is part of why we do not have any expulsion hearings this year in our first semester. So, Tanya?
All right, so funding,
What did the credits do?
So that's what you have to earn to graduate.
Okay.
So state
I didn't know if there was the same credits or was something different or.
Same credits.
Same credits,
Yep.
okay.
Yes. Yep.
Can you briefly describe like what the Success Center is like? do they go there and do their independent work? How are they receiving instruction? Like, how does that work?
So, Success Center, so we've always had credit recovery, and we've had a teacher that's offered multiple hours of credit recovery. And what we wanted to do is, so a lot of these students, they struggle having a new teacher every hour. They struggle with all those relationships. They struggle moving in the building. They struggle. And so anyway, Success Center is one classroom, 3 teachers technically, and they go there and they spend the majority of their day in that classroom, earning their credits through Edgenuity, which is an online credit recovery program. But they have the help of a teacher that's in there walking around and working with them. What we've done to break that day up a little bit is first hour they actually meet with our social worker, and they're taking a course for career and life planning. And so really what that does is it allows our social worker to work with those students, meet some of their social needs, and also work with them on life skills. And so that's what we do first hour with them. Then they start working on Edgenuity to start earning credits and whatever courses they need. 5th hour we have Jean Wilson come in, and she teaches an English class to them so that they have at least one class where it's a break. They're not staring at a computer and getting all of their instruction via videos. And so we have her come in, and then they get their English credit through the class that she's teaching 5th hour. And then the afternoon is when we have tried to get them in more electives in the rest of the building. If there's not an elective they're in, then they're still in credit recovery working on whatever courses they need. So that's what Success Center is. Or did that answer what you were?
Yeah, so they're basically in that group or in a room together working in credits online,
Yes.
basically,
Yes.
most of the day.
Yes.
Are they having the growth? Like, if you look at the MAP scores, or for them, are they meeting their targets as they pursue, or is it, hey, you're doing this stuff, checking the box so you can graduate, or are they actually learning in this? I mean, that's.
So, I mean, they're, at least through Edgenuity, they are meeting mastery of their quizzes and tests that they're taking as they work through Edgenuity. And so, yes, when it comes to are they learning, they are, as required by that coursework. MAP testing, to be honest, it's too early to tell at this point. So we would have to wait until the end of this year to look at
You
that.
have the previous years, right?
Not MAP data.
Oh, not my
No,
data.
right.
So is it a requirement to meet some sort of attendance criteria, or
To be in Success Center?
Yeah.
Or
no, to be in Success Center?
So Success Center, not necessarily. Many of the students that are in there do have poor attendance, or did have poor attendance, but mostly it is the student services team looking at our students that we know are struggling, we know have had trauma, or we know that have those issues in their life. Again, go down the list of XYZ of what they could be, and just knowing those students and talking to their families and seeing if they thought this would be a better option, because, well, we thought it would be a better option for them, and so then we asked their families if they would like them to be in Success Center this year.
Okay, but they don't have to attend when they don't
They do.
want to?
No, they do have
have
to attend.
They're,
Yes.
They're subject to our same attendance policies and truancy policies as well.
So attendance UA, is that an authorized absence, or is that
That's an
something else?
unexcused absence.
Unexcused?
Is that
Right.
the same
So
as the
they're
other
not there
columns?
for the day, or they're not there for a period of time?
A period of time. And so that's why you see so I'm looking at student E that this semester, 21.3. So they've had different segments of the day that they're gone, and that's how you end up with these fractions of days that they may not be there. And it ends up being unexcused for whatever reason. Either the parents aren't calling them in, they're not providing a doctor's note, they're just skipping.
Yeah, but if they're not expelled, then they're going to have more unexcused absence. It looks like some of the people, or some of the students with the, student D, L, and M. I mean, they have contributed to this year, but there's blanks in the columns for previous years.
So I believe that student was virtual last year,
Okay.
which is why that's blank the year before. And if you go back to
But
2020.
same thing is, if they're blank, then they aren't. We have more students, which, that kind of explains it.
How do these kids perform in their elective classes? Do you know, or?
I would have to go back and pull that data individually. Some of the credits they're earning there are through electives. Again, without being too specific, there's at least one student that isn't finishing one elective class this year because of 2 of his discipline issues were in that class, and there was a fight. It's a mixed bag, to be honest with you. It's not that some of the students can't perform in the electives and courses, and some of them are, but that is where we tend to see the issues with students that are in Success Center.
I will say though, we're not forcing anyone to go out and take an elective course. They can stay in Success Center and continue working online on their Edgenuity courses. So in general, students are wanting to go out and get that break in the day, and they enjoy going out to do some things where they can work with their hands, go to art class, switch it up, and not be behind a computer.
Yeah. Any other questions about this before we move on to?
Was it started in 2020?
We just started
No.
it this school year.
Right. So Success Center, I mean, this was something, an alternative program got brought up last year, correct? And, you know, not enough was presented to you guys, or for whatever reason, we weren't able to move forward with it. But within the building, we feel very strongly that there's a need for something like this. And so Success Center, to be honest, was our ability to put a program together for these students in our building within what we already offered. And so,
In lieu of credit recovery. So
in lieu of an alternative,
yeah.
a full-blown
But
alternative
does-
program.
And we still do have credit recovery because
Oh,
we
you
have
still
students.
have that.
We have
Yes.
students who only need, they may have missed a credit or something, and they're working on just a couple. Whereas these are students who are past that point and they need several hours of the day in order to work.
Yeah,
So I don't understand how. So it's brand new this year.
Yes.
correct.
Then where's the data coming from for 21?
That's still the student data. So that's still that student's data.
Because the
from
heading
prior
says
years.
THS Success Center data for all of it.
Well, it's still that group of students. So the
Okay.
student population of kids that are in Success Center. So sorry, I can see how that would be confusing. But yes, so Success Center really is just the purple column. But as you go back to the other two school years, the prior school years, it's those students and how they performed in the years prior.
In the traditional setting.
Right.
Okay.
How many days are in a semester?
How many days are in a semester?
Yeah.
I mean,
Approximately
yeah.
80. So they're missing.
It's a little less than that. It's probably more like 77.
I mean, we can spend all day on this
Yeah.
data.
Right.
Let's try to keep moving through the program and the process
Alright.
and what we're trying to get to.
Thank you.
All right. So, one of the reasons last year that we kind of put our alternative program on hold was because we wanted to make sure we had the funding in place before we move forward. So, we have met with a couple different folks through KSDE and then through Greenbush, and we've talked about what is the best funding stream for an alternative high school program. So one of the dedicated stable funding streams that we've identified is the state at-risk funding. That funding is, and you probably read all this in Tony's topics that I sent out on Friday, but that funding is equated in the school district based on your free and reduced numbers. Now, the funding that you get may be based on free and reduced numbers, but you don't have to use that funding on only students who qualify for free and reduced. It is needed to be used to provide services for those students who are struggling academically. So at-risk funding is not going away. It's a funding stream that is stable, it's dedicated, and it must be used for additional educational opportunities. So we have to do something with it that's above and beyond what we're already providing to all kids. It also has to be evidence-based in our use of the funds. And an alternative high school program is evidence-based. And what we're using is evidence-based. So we can use it for staffing, for curriculum and supplies, and in visiting with KSDE and Greenbush folks, they both indicated that this is an ideal use of the at-risk funds to provide an alternative program for your high school students who are most at risk of dropping out. So logistics, one of the things would be staffing. Who do we employ for this? Initially, we were looking at an assistant principal to serve in this role, but we've looked at that and we've analyzed some things and we've decided that we could use a dean of an alternative school. Now, normally you can't use at-risk funding for an administrative type position, but this dean of an alternative school would also serve as a teacher. So you would have a dean who is also a teacher, who is responsible for the reporting and overseeing the management of the alternative program, but you would also have a teacher, another teacher there. So you would have two dedicated teaching staff involved in that program. Now, where would we put this? Well, this year, one of the problems with having the program over at the high school is that it's still within the brick and mortar of the high school. And those students who struggle within those walls already, it's still kind of a struggle for them because they're still exposed to the same things that have caused anxiety in the past. So running into friends, out at lunch, in electives with other kids. So utilizing the space in this additional building, which is one of the things that we talked about when we were promoting the bond, was to use some of these classrooms for an alternative program for those students in need. So we've identified classrooms in this building that would be ideal for that. We've talked through how it would work logistically, and we feel like we have the staffing piece and the location and the funding all set in place.
So we don't have to have like a licensed administrator running this.
No, it would technically be, because it would be an alternative program, it would be an extension of our high school. So our administrators here would be the administrators over the entire high school and its subsidiary programs. But we would just have a dean who would be responsible for the management, the reporting, contacting parents, and parent-teacher conferences, those type things, that would be on a day-to-day basis.
So the way I see this is we really have two teachers, but we have a teacher that would be willing to receive an additional stipend to take on the responsibilities that would come with that, being the dean of the alternative school, and then that would also give them, with their title, the authority to handle the discipline issues that come up, if any, but that would be their responsibility with that title.
How much time would they spend in the classroom?
We would have to break that down. I still think they would spend 70 to 75% of their day in the classroom teaching.
And we feel like removing the classrooms and putting them in a different but yet close location would give us some extra ability. So they'd be far enough removed where they would have their own separate location and program, but they would also have the ability to go into some of the electives if that were appropriate for those particular students. We feel like having lunch over here would be ideal for those students. They could, eat lunch as a family, have that bonding, but also if they needed to be part of programs over there, they could participate in that aspect.
Any more questions about that before we move on? Good.
Logistically, I mean, when this building was in renovation, we've talked about it several times, is the way that the rec center access and hallways, no one has been able to, without additional renovation, to my knowledge, been able to figure out how you separate public from students just walking through the same hallways. How did you address that
Well,
logistically?
during the school days when we'd have the folks here, the students here, and they would have their teachers also, I don't believe we would need to separate too much. The rec has their things going on during the day. We'll have the students in classrooms, and they'll be busy. They're not going to be wandering around in the halls. So
And they won't have a passing period or
yeah,
anything like that. I mean,
But they do leave and go to the rest. I mean,
yeah,
we have
right. They
restrooms
would
and
be
stuff,
going to the restroom.
and and lunch. So because from a security, we've talked about security being so important. We're doing, and at this point in time, because we have access control at all of the buildings, right?
yes.
I just got an email today with a new policy at the elementary school where, you're hitting the button and they're not letting you into the foyer until you describe what you're here for. And here we have students and people just walking in. There's no security check or anything like that for people walking in, walking down the hallway, right by the classroom where the kids are at, right into the rec. I think this hallway right here is going to be the main pathway.
For the start, for the rec commission, yes.
Yes.
But they also have another access point over by the kitchen.
Yes, but there's no way to close that off.
The kitchen?
No, from that other access point to access. We've
I don't-
walked that down, and we know.
I don't think
without
we can
adding
lock it
doors.
down even with fire. I mean, you're talking some fire marshal.
Oh, I
issues.
agree. It's a challenge, but I mean, it's that approach is not consistent with what we're doing in every other building where we're having security professionals come in and advise us on things. We're making improvements at all of the buildings, and then here, it's
I mean, the one thing you
180
could,
degrees
you
different.
could do is is, I mean, we can lock these doors down here. The rec commission can stay on the south end if need be, or we partition off this hallway right here.
We've got some options.
I mean, there are options. And
Well,
But you're right, that's
you
something that we
said
would
that
need
there
to
was
look
that
at.
But
had
it's
been
not-
looked at, so I was asking what
No, it's
what
not.
the decision or recommendation had been.
No. Right now, I know the rec commission is going to be coming in from the north and from probably the kitchen area periodically. But those are the two access points.
I mean, I think this is the first time we've heard this, so I'm not trying, I think Drew has a valid point, so I guess I think it's an issue that needs to be addressed
If-
probably before this, you know,
Right.
would be officially approved, but I mean, I think we probably need to kind of keep pushing through the presentation, but recognize that that is a challenge.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
That's something that we need to look at, because you're right. It's not consistent with the other buildings, and it is
Right.
something that we place a lot of value on. So I think that is a great point.
So we've kind of talked about just the curriculum that our students already use in Success Center. We would continue using Edgenuity primarily. Our students would be required to take math, science, and an English class every semester. Additionally, we would like to offer some of the special programming that we're currently offering, continuing the work that we have done with developing relationships with the staff members at the high school. Our counselors have been instrumental in developing relationships with these at-risk students, as well as our social worker and our school-based clinician. So continuing those relationships over here with these students. We also want to offer a time each day with some life skills, whether that's career and life planning, giving students the opportunity to do work study where they are off campus and earning credit for like an internship or work study type of thing, as well as offering maybe culinary or budgeting activities, planning a meal, those type of things. And additionally, with the proximity to the gym, we could offer some PE courses and lifetime fitness activities just to break up the day. Depending upon student interests and their career path, we'd like to bring in different guests to speak if possible. And also, depending upon the student, we would look at specific cases of allowing certain students who've earned the privilege over back to the high school to take THS electives, whether that's at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. We really want to limit the back and forth with these students. So these would be our students, and so they would be eligible to participate in sports, go to dances, participate in clubs and activities if they meet the academic eligibility requirements for those activities.
I want to share with you guys something. So some of the Paola and Ottawa, two schools that we've reached out to, I believe Baser also follows this policy. Something that we would like to implement with this, if you guys approved us to go forward with an alternative high school program. Most schools utilize a special attendance policy with daily learning targets. And so each student has a daily learning goal that when they show up, they are working towards hitting that daily learning target. That daily learning target is going to keep them on track to pass 10 classes per semester. A typical student would be on target to pass 8 classes per semester. You do have the ability to work at a faster rate with Edgenuity courses. And so we would target 10 classes per semester, so earning 5 credits per semester, which typically these students have a deficit in credits towards graduation, and so this allows them to start catching up to their peers. If they hit their daily learning target, we would have permission from parents to dismiss them once they have hit their daily learning targets. And so students would be able to come to school, work towards meeting their goals they need to hit for the day. Once they have hit that, with parent permission, they would be dismissed and able to leave school that day and go to work or go home or go do what they need to do. And so that is something that we've seen that both Paola and Ottawa would say those policies have helped lead to those students being very successful in their program, because that is a carrot that they have in front of them daily to show up, do their work, hit their target, and then many times these students struggle being in the school building. And so that allows them to hit that goal and then leave and leave this area where they have stress, anxiety, etc. With that, another part of a typical alternative high school program, most of them are 21 credit programs. 21 credits is the state minimum to earn a diploma. And so if you look at the left there, a 21 credit program, students would meet state standards, a diploma would still be awarded. For students in the alt school, we would like to still do kind of a small individual ceremony for those students to recognize their accomplishment. And then they would still have tech and JUCO opportunities. However, they would not meet qualified admissions for four-year universities or colleges in the state of Kansas, and they would need to know that up front. The 28, now, one thing I want to say, that is what most alternative high school programs are based on, as a 21 credit program. We would still extend the opportunity to earn 28 credits through our alternative high school program. And so Kelly was speaking earlier of students that might earn the right to go back and take more electives at the high school. So students, once they hit 21 credits, we would then look at, okay, let's allow you to, if you're interested, take more classes to get to your 28 credit program, which would be what USD 464 says you do to earn a diploma and be a graduate of Tonganoxie High School. A diploma would still be awarded. At that point in time, they'd be able to participate in our traditional graduation ceremony that we have at the end of the school year for all of our other students that hit the 28 credit requirement. And then at that point, they would also meet qualified admissions for any four-year university in the state of Kansas.
What's the difference with the 4-year, I mean, as far as, because you've met the state standards with the credits, you've met, they're covering, or is it different material? Does it not meet state standards or requirements for
Qualified
coursework?
Admissions has very specific courses that you take to earn the ability to be qualified to go to a four-year university.
Right. And so those are built within our graduation requirements.
Right, okay.
But in terms of a state minimum to award a diploma, it's less.
But so if they went and took those courses,
Correct.
they could then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Any questions about those two pathways or? Okay. All right. That's the end of what we brought to present to you guys tonight. More than happy to answer any other questions or thoughts about it right now.
How is this, I see maybe a couple differences, but how is this different than what you're currently doing with those kids in the Success Center?
So I do feel like, it sounds bad to say it, but I'm just going to say it. I do feel like isolating that program a little bit and getting away from everything else that's happening in our high school building would allow those students to be more successful. They would have less distractions. It would also allow them, again, it would allow them to have a smaller community where there's a little bit more trust. They're not dealing with as many personalities in the high school. They can come in, they can build those relationships with a small group of people they trust, which I think allows them to thrive a little bit more. The discipline issues, I think, will be less in terms of, again, we've avoided some expulsions this year, but we still have some discipline issues that have come up. But none of those have happened within Success Center, within that group that they're meeting with most of the day. And so I think those are big components to some additional changes that could come with a true alternative high school setting. Not to mention, well, it was a lot of work creatively just to fit those schedules together with teachers. And so this would give us the luxury to meet those students' needs. Like, I actually want to make some changes to it next semester. I can't because my staff member schedules are locked in.
How are they supervised right now? Like,
so our social worker has them the first hour of the day. We have another teacher who has primarily been credit recovery throughout, well, here recently within his career. So that teacher then is in there with them for the rest of the day, other than fifth hour when we bring in Jean Wilson, who's now in her MRT position, but a former English teacher. So we bring her in then to teach English that hour, and then
Well,
electives the rest of the day.
Well, your benefit is these kids can graduate with a lower
Right.
credits than everybody else. They're not graduating otherwise, unless they do the full credit recovery and get all 28 credits.
It's a struggle to get them to 21. And that's just being real. I mean, I think in a lot of conversations with some of these parents, they would say, we would love to just get to 21. And they're okay. I've talked to some of them. They would be okay with not being able to take or participate in the graduation ceremony. They just want their kid to get a diploma.
And you could see at Ottawa that they started primarily with juniors and seniors and then kind of opened it up as they noticed other students younger that might need an alternative school. And right now our numbers, we're capped in this one classroom with this one teacher, and having the ability to have two separate classrooms with two teachers would really help us out, because we could identify some sophomores right now that are not in Success Center for this year, but they would really benefit from this program.
And on that slide, how many kids are participating in this now? Did you have?
So is that, you got it?
I
Oops.
think 14 here, sorry. 13?
13.
Yeah.
And to be honest, so there's 2 students that would cut off of that also, because they're like half and half Success Center students. We're utilizing it because they could use it, but they also have so many elective courses that they're not really a Success Center student. But when they are not an elective, they are taking their core classes in Success Center. So really it's 15.
I mean, my question is mostly centered around finance. I mean, I think we have an at-risk now, so I guess I don't really understand how this impacts us budgetarily. I mean, do we get more? So, I mean, if there's obviously a need. I mean, in my mind, to me, it's a lot of it's financial, and I don't want to. That's just how I kind of look at it. But then, in addition to understanding the finances, then part of the need is the implications related to our accreditation. So what happens if we drop below 90%? I mean, I don't want it. I don't want it, but I mean, they're not going to shut us down.
No.
I mean, they were 80 at Ottawa for years.
Well, this is the first year of the final 5 years of this accreditation cycle. The KISA is a new accreditation. It used to be, they used to have several different methods of being accredited. So this is the first year of the end of the 5+1 cycle. Honestly, the Accreditation Council could say you are conditionally accredited for a year until you improve, or they could say you're not accredited.
Or they would say, do you have a plan to reach your goal?
Yes. And that's
That would be the 3 I would say.
That's part of what we're completing now as part of our report that we have to submit by Friday. And then we're coming to you to present on January 11th with all of our data. And then we will present to our KISA outside visitation team on January 25th. This is all part of it because they're going to ask, you know, if your dropout graduation rate doesn't look good, you're below where you're supposed to be, what's your plan? And so that's part of what we're trying to present to them. Now the funding cycle, I will say, the at-risk funding has increased in the past couple of years. The state put more money significantly toward that and is expecting us to use it appropriately. Well, we had plans to use this on all these different programs, right? Well, at the same time, we're getting this ESSER money. And so we're scrambling to figure out, okay, well, we had planned to use it on these specific programs, which were then covered by ESSER. And so our Greenbush representative said, you guys have to use this money, and the best way to use this would be for an alternative high school program. That's the best way to use our funding so we don't start losing it.
So that fund is
And
accumulating as it growing.
It's growing, and our at-risk funding will continue to grow.
But does this, when we talked about this last year, it was, well, if you keep those 10 kids in school, then you get they're in your head count.
Right.
Yes.
And once I thought when we came through the budgeting is like, maybe that was when the Greenbush guy was doing the example, or I don't remember, but like you get a weighting. Is this
That was Greenbush.
keeping these kids in the school and not just their head count, but does this change some weightings in some area that increases that funding?
It would change some of the at-risk weightings, and then of course the head count, the FTE.
We would still get the FTE, but we still have.
Not if they dropped out.
But we still have the at-risk funds
Right.
that we really need to use for something like this.
I mean,
It's a combination.
yeah, no. I think, and I'll shut up and let other people ask questions. I think this was good instead of like a special meeting doing this, because I think the patrons need to hear this, because I think this, it has impacts to we have to educate all the kids, and it impacts our rating, and nobody wants their kid going to a high school that's not accredited because several others dropped out. Not to be alarmist, or I don't think that would happen, but the financial stuff, kind of better understanding some of the data and the data from the others schools, some of those trends and things. And I'm with Drew that the flow and the, I mean, isolating them over here, but having public and the students, and that's just not we have to do
And
something about
I
that.
think
We have
I
a
don't-
success center now in that building, and so if that was like the one thing holding it up beyond the finance, we can make it work in our building. It's not that we can't find room for them there. And Drew, that was a great point. The safety component over here is something that we'd have to analyze. And to be real honest, there's other details we need to look at too. We just need to figure out if the ball's rolling that direction. If that's what's holding us up, then we can start brainstorming on that. But we could make this work in our current high school building. I believe a setting over here would be better. They would be more successful in a setting over here for some of the reasons I already stated. But we would have to figure out how we secure the classrooms.
I mean, but what you presented to me, you're already doing it. You just want to make modifications to it.
We want to make modifications that we think would be that they would be more successful in that setting. And what we're doing this year, again, we just got creative and how can we piecemeal this together? But I think we could have a better offering for those students in a true alternative high school program.
Well, we do have to apply to the state to offer an official alternative program, and that application is due in February. So my plan was that we would work through all the kinks. We'd ask for your approval at the January meeting, and then move forward with our plan to apply to the state.
How extensive is that application?
It gets us into the specifics of the Students' Day, our teacher training, funding. It's extensive, but it's not. I can do it. I mean.
Well, I just didn't know with the terms of, do you have time after the submission to figure out physically where things would go?
Yes.
And have that flexibility to where you don't have to have it all figured out?
Yes,
in
but I'm
February.
confident we could come up with a solution to the logistics, the safety.
Oh, I'm sure we can. It's just, what is it? What's the right?
I think,
I think
Drew,
the biggest
I think as soon as we know that there's a commitment toward it, then we have to work with like the rec commission and the staff within this own building.
Right,
to
and we
make-
visited with the rec commission when there, and they had the same,
Right, absolutely.
we're aligned on
Yeah,
what
right.
we don't want to have happen.
I think we can definitely continue and make this work with our 13, but if we're looking at 18 in that same space, that would be
Yeah,
really
pretty small room.
really tricky for
Yeah.
us. So
We have some sophomores now that after 3 semesters in high school we're already seeing. I mean, there's a deficit. They're not going to graduate if we just keep doing what we're doing. And so we have sophomores we would like to get in there next semester, but it's going to be difficult.
Well, to some, I'm curious as to what degree having only 13 in the room helps to contribute to the lack of discipline.
which is really one reason why we would want 2 rooms
Right.
with 2 teachers, and when you're feeling frustrated with one person, before it escalates, you can walk to the other room, right? So having that flexibility.
I have a question about the staffing. So right now you have 3 staff working in the room, right? The
Right.
counselor. So when you're talking about the dean and the other teacher, the 2 staff members that are needed, are you talking about new hires for both of those, or are you talking about reassigning people over here?
So ultimately, we're talking about 2 new positions. Now, one of those positions, I believe, a current staff member that's involved in it would like to move with it and stay with this program if they're able to. And so we'd be looking at hiring an additional position then with that person for the alternative program, and then we would need to replace that other person in our high school.
So it's 2 new hires, and a dean is not, like salary wise, a dean is not an administrator, right? So their salary is above a teacher's salary, but not as high as
With
a
the
Right.
stipend.
It's like a coach's stipend almost is what we would be paying them.
Okay.
So they would have we'd have 2 teaching salaries and then an additional stipend to be the dean over here.
So
Is-
go ahead.
I don't know what level of, how many hours per day the Success Center teachers are committing at this point in time? Is that creating, I mean, prior to this year, their daily activities were, or their days were filled up with something, right? Is that creating challenges with their?
It is creating challenges with our credit recovery, to be honest, because our primary success center teacher has been offering multiple hours of credit recovery throughout the day for our entire student population. Not every kid so Mrs. Hoops brought up earlier, a kid might fail the first semester of geometry. So then they can pass the second semester of geometry. When they get to the next year, they need to take Algebra 2 to continue on with our graduation path. But they still need to make up that first semester of geometry that they failed. Typically, they would do that in credit recovery. So you would have a class with that teacher, you would make up that credit there, and then you would be caught back up with your math credits. What we've done is we have really limited that opportunity for those students that don't need to be in Success Center, but they still have credits that they need to make up. And so we've been able to use an hour from a Spanish teacher, and she was willing to do credit recovery and provide that service. But there's a lot of students in there, and then we can only offer it that 1 hour that she's able to do it. And so it's handcuffed us in some other ways with scheduling.
When this came up previously, we talked about just, improvements for the entire student population. I would use the term academic advisor, or, because counselor has its own connotations to it,
Yeah.
but really an academic advisor role, where, the advisors are meeting with each student on a regular basis. How has that been going? Has that been maintained? Is that going as planned?
Yes, and really they have more eyes on them. So our academic counselors are still meeting with them. Our counselors are still meeting with them. Our social worker is in there daily, also meeting with them and helping track. And then that has also been the responsibility of our primary success center teacher also to be working with them. And he's really in charge of their Edgenuity courses that they're taking online. And so we have increased the eyes that are on them, the voices that are talking to them. And I say increased. We've increased the people with that responsibility of tracking their path towards graduation. But
Well,
in
not
that,
just
we've
tracking,
also
but
kind of shrunk
advising,
their-
hey, what is it that you're wanting? Because, the way it's going, my kids will come up with a different idea of what they want to do every year, right? So, and that shifts, and that then changes the courses that they need to take. And it's all about flexibility, right? But I'd like for, at least for my child, to have, hey, here's a file of here's what needs to be done in the next, here's what lines up, here's why you have to take this next semester versus waiting, because if you wait, then you have a conflict, and that kind of goes into scheduling, right? How much certainty do we have that the schedule isn't going to change
Right.
year to year?
So in terms of long-term academic planning, to be real honest, most of these kids and families just want a diploma.
I'm talking about
I
the
think
other
Drew's
population.
question, has to do with for not just these kids, but everybody. That was kind of the question we raised.
Oh, is it kind of
Before we do the alternative school, do we have all our ducks in a row on the 95% of kids that are at the high school and don't need this service?
You guys covered that last.
I was gonna say, I guess
Yeah.
I felt like we went over that, but if there's more questions on that, then
Well, I thought it was
I
a
mean,
good presentation. I think it
our-
was just a refreshing,
Yeah,
making sure
yeah.
we feel like we're on
Yes.
course and everything's
yeah,
going
this
as
isn't,
planned.
this isn't gonna pull away from our IPS process or academic counselors meeting
Yeah.
with every other student. That process is all still happening now with these students in our.
Yeah, I want to make sure that as we're focusing on this, that we are still maintaining for everybody else too.
Yeah, I don't foresee that
Yeah, okay.
being an issue, and again, with 2 new staff members really in charge of that, some of that would shift away from. That responsibility really would shift more towards those 2 staff members. So
Yeah.
lighten the load, I guess, a little bit
Okay.
for academic counselors.
And our
Sorry, I
counselors,
misunderstood what you were asking earlier.
they've continued to meet with, even since our November meeting, continued to meet with all students regarding their enrollment in that process. And these are students as well, that they're meeting with them probably maybe a little bit more as they develop pretty tight relationships. Just because of some of the trauma that those students have been in, that's a male teacher that's in there, but sometimes they are looking to develop a close relationship with female. And so Mrs. George and Mrs. Martin both have developed strong relationships with those kids, as well as Mrs. Hubble, our social worker, and so we continue to advise them just as we have the rest of our students.
Yeah, good. I mean, yes, they only want a diploma, but they're going to have to do something when they get out. You
Right.
know?
Right.
And some of that comes through course selection for those kids of, we know you want an elective, you want to be out of there, and you want to get into some of our CTE courses
Yeah.
and advise them in that.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
why I'm excited about if we could offer that, career and life planning embedded into this program to where we can give those kids some extra attention toward, what are you gonna do with your life after you get this diploma? What's next for you? How do you rent an apartment? How do you make a grocery budget? What do you do with your life after this?
And some workplace opportunities as well, getting them out of our building and areas that we can give them some credits for the learning they're doing that is real world
There is.
learning outside of our building.
My last comment is there's some of that what you just described that the entire student population would benefit from, probably.
Yeah.
So what are the other things the ESSER funds can be spent on?
You mean
There's,
the at-risk?
Yeah,
Uh,
for the at-risk.
A multitude.
Yeah, I just finished filling out that application. There's anything
Hmm?
from PPE, equipment, staff salaries, at-risk programs.
We gave a last year retention.
Yeah, retention bonus.
That was a year ago.
There's a variety, but because we got a big increase in at-risk funds at the same time we got ESSER, we had to figure out a plan.
Yeah.
And-
So we've not been spending our money
Oh, no,
on the
we have.
at-risk.
We have, but at the advisement of KSDE and our Greenbush folks, they said you need to be using this at-risk money in a more targeted fashion to help your at-risk students.
Our at-risk pool has grown because we have offset it with ESSER funds. And that's a pretty simple way to put it, but
Yes.
But you can spend it on several different
yes.
avenues.
Yes.
Yes.
Not just this presentation.
I don't know if this is the time to say this or not, but I'm impressed that you went ahead and did this program this semester and have all the data to present. I think that's helpful because I think for me personally, last time when we heard about the at-risk program and were asked to vote on it, I think that, it's I don't know. I just think that it's helpful to understand how it works and that it's such a need or such a priority for you that you went ahead and figured out how to work it, this semester. And I think for me personally, if we're supposed to vote on this in January, I personally would just need to know, more of the safety logistics issues, because I don't know, it's more of liability for someone voting on something like this if you say, oh yeah, go ahead and do this, and you don't even know if
Yeah.
they're going to come in these classrooms and there's security cameras. I would, in order to have peace of mind voting on this, I personally feel like you've proven that it's a need. You've proven that as leaders of the building, you're passionate about this. Obviously, you've already implemented it and have, that's evident to me, but you can't, I personally can't vote on something unless I know that you're, not
Right.
gonna put risk on it. So, moving forward, if our action item is for January, those are just the puzzle pieces I would need.
Yep, okay, it's good.
Any other questions? I think we kind of laid out some issues that would help us make that final decision in terms of finances, kind of the
Good.
logistics.
Any big ones? So I'm hearing finance and safety.
Logistics.
This,
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
Anything else from anybody that you would need more information on before January?
No, but I would imagine if something comes to mind, we just
Yeah.
pass it through Lauren.
You bet.
Okay.
Thank you.
So when you talk about budget and finance, the at-risk funds pay for these staff members
They would. We have at-risk funds available
to pay
to
these
pay for
staff
this.
members?
Yes, and we do.
Yeah, it's kind of not a little bit of curiosity, just how like Drew pointed out, but when our dropout rate went up and our graduation rate up. I mean, I don't know. I know there's statistics are kind of nutty, but
Right.
that it does look a little funny.
It's when government's in charge of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know you guys are where you're at, but you know, honestly, the stat I see every day is the group of kids in our building that need this. Like that's what I look at every day, is that group of kids that they're not going to make it if we don't have a special program for them. So that's what I see every day. So anyways.
I would say I'm quick, everyone in this room knows that I'm quick to point out all the flaws of everything. Right. But I would say that one thing, I feel like what I hear from people or students in the high school is that they've been very receptive to the like the attendance and the rules. There's been new rules implemented and they are happy about them, which is interesting and fabulous. But I think that, this whole program to me kind of goes hand in hand in that, because I'm guessing that these students are having better stats in attendance and in their success of their classroom studies because you're showing that you care about them. And I think, student body wise, I think that's, I don't know. I mean, I think it's accolades to that programming that you're doing, because I think that people are talking about it. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So,
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Looks like Cody, you're still on deck here. Or AV upgrades for band room. Why do we say Cody?
Okay, I think this is in combination with
Okay.
Aaron, so,
You can't leave yet.
so he's not leaving.
I'm gonna let you kick it off.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess so. It says
Yeah,
Cody
they're
on my
working
thing.
together.
wake up.
AV upgrades for band room.
Thank you, Aaron. Or Kelly, I'm sorry. What was I thinking? Freudian.
You all have the AV quote in the.
It's in our
board docs,
action
right?
items,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's in.
Okay. Okay. I do not have it pulled up. If you want me to pull it up, I can, but, yeah, I'm really gonna hand this over to Cody, but just a high level, last month when we started talking about and the board approved the AV order for the CTE classrooms, we had originally talked about doing some upgrades in the band room. When we got that quote back just prior to last month's board meeting, the quote for the band room was quite higher than the initial budgeted amount was, that would make it similar to the other standard classrooms. So we pulled that out so we could talk about it a little bit more. Went back to KCAV, went back to Cody and the band teacher, and talked through it. Said, is this really appropriate? What exactly is the scope here? So essentially, it is bringing the band room up to the same technology as the choir room. So what the new choir room is getting in this expansion, it has some sound recording and feedback capabilities. So it's the same technology as the choir room, except the band room is much larger. So it's much more expensive due to the fact that it needs a larger projector and a larger screen to be able to share the information and have it be visible to all the students in that classroom. So the quote is, I believe, around $40,000.
42,129.
Yes. The choir room, for reference, was somewhere around a little over $20,000. Again, most of that cost difference is in a larger screen, a larger projector, and larger speakers, just to be able to be heard in the larger.
And microphones.
And the number of microphones. Yeah. So I'll let Cody talk to the educational benefits of why they are pursuing that. And then in terms of funding, the AV or the low voltage budget within the bond funds has still come in. You know, we're obviously nearing completion. Don't anticipate any more change orders in terms of low voltage or security. There were savings in that line item because the budget was established in a manner to allow the entire cost of the data cabling, but the project got the E-rate funding, so there was quite a bit of savings early on when that E-rate was awarded. That has stayed within that IT budget, so there is money within the existing bond funds to pay for this, but since it is $40,000, we thought we should bring it to you guys to discuss.
Thanks, Aaron.
Sure.
I will just say up front, it is not lost on me that we are in a position that who would have ever thought that we'd have this much money at the end of a bond to continue to look at upgrades. And so I know it is easy to sit here and say we need this, or whatever, but so that's not lost on me. As we looked at this upgrade for our band room, I didn't know up front, is this worth spending this much money on? Is it worth providing to our students? And I went and talked to Mr. Van about it, and because at first I thought, okay, if we are just recording 1 or 2 performances a year to send off to state or to send off, is it worth this type of investment? And after talking to Mr. Van and you know, not being a music teacher, not understanding what that their daily world looks like, they view this as the opportunity to to provide daily feedback, which is one of the fundamentals of teaching and learning, is being able to provide feedback to individuals so that they can see or hear what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and make corrections. And so Mr. Van sees this as a tool to record his students playing immediately and with ease, and have immediate playback, because so part of this is a system where you have immediate playback for your students, so that they can hear what they're doing right, again, what they might be doing wrong, and then make those corrections immediately. And so there's a reason that we put this technology into our choir room, so our choir would have that capabilities with their new room. And so ultimately that is, after talking to Mr. Van, looking at that, why I would like to provide that same opportunity, that same technology to our band and to Mr. Van as we look to upgrade their room. And so that was really my primary reason looking at this and saying, yes, I do think if we have the opportunity, if the money is there, why wouldn't we want to provide this opportunity to our band as well, to have immediate feedback daily on what they sound like, what corrections they need to make. I think it would be beneficial and worth it for them to have that opportunity and to have the same technology that our choir classroom has also. Any questions about?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So do we have that capability in our gymnasium for people in basketball, volleyball?
To record?
Yeah, because they do, I mean, at different clubs, they do have that capability. So if you're coaching a volleyball team, you can tape your practice.
So they have,
and then,
that's a good comparison. So they have iPads where they could film practice and go back and watch it. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay,
so
sorry.
There are different gymnasiums that they have the capability so that if you're running a volleyball program,
Okay.
you can tape your practice and then you can go to the screen on the wall and you can say, okay, this is what we just did. We just ran this play and this
Right.
is where you went. You need to go here. You need to, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I just didn't know in the gymnasium if we did the same thing.
We wouldn't have that immediately available. I mean, we'd be able to film practice with an iPad and go to the media room and watch it there. But in terms of immediate, like instant replay, no, we do not have that.
Most significant difference here, Kai, is the sound.
Right. That's
That's
I'm not saying I'm for everything.
no, we can record.
Right.
We can record and do all that.
It's
Right.
another. So choir, band, anything that happens in the gymnasium, they're all extracurricular. They're all learning opportunities. So if we have it in choir and band, I think that we should also look to have that.
Well, they,
and the gymnasium. I mean, it's.
I don't
I'm
have
not
that
even,
presentation
like,
ready
I know
tonight,
you think I'm
but I've
crazy,
got
but I'm.
No, you're not crazy.
Band ready.
What?
I'm joking. I said I don't have that presentation ready tonight, but I'm ready to talk about
I would like that
bands.
in January.
Okay.
No, I respect Mr. Van a lot. I mean, what he's done with the program here. I mean, I've had people in the community say when they've been to somewhere we've traveled with the parade, they said that they almost feel embarrassed for the other schools because how much better our band sounds. And I'm friends with Mr. Van, and I talked to him about this. Like, what does this get you? And he said the same things you did, but I mean, he put it in terms of this allows the program to get to the next level. We are good enough to get to the next level. We are good enough to work towards and have goals like playing in the Rose Bowl parade.
Yeah.
We are good enough to be able to get to that, and this allows him to market that, for him to refine the sound, which made sense to me because, like you, I didn't. But yeah, it makes sense if you're sitting in between a bunch of trumpet players. All you're going to hear is trumpets, you know. So, you know I think for what he's done with the program and what he's invested in the kids and everything, to me, it's like why wouldn't you take it something that's like that to the next level?
Right. I agree.
Well, I think this is on the action items later. I mean, I think the point of the presentation is kind of give an overview now of why it's
Yep.
what the need is, and I think, you know, not to beat it, you know, we have it in the band room or the choir room. We've updated the audio visual and the CTE. I mean, it's trying to get the whole school on the next level.
Yeah.
And these kids get less than the rest of
At times, yeah.
than the rest. So I mean, I want anyway.
The other sports.
I wasn't trying to downplay this. You know,
This is an
I think
elective
it's
class,
fabulous.
not an
You know, I'll be voting
extracurricular
for it,
activity.
I'm just saying.
Right. It's both, right? But anyways.
good, thank you, Cody.
Yep, no problem. Back over to you.
Thanks, Cody.
All right, Aaron. Now the rest of your presentation.
All
Is
right.
this going to be your last one? We're going to get one in January when everything's
You're
done.
gonna get one in January, and then I'll be back in February for CTE. So you can't get rid of me quite yet.
All right.
All right. Starting with the budget update, really nothing, really no changes from last month. In terms of the contingency detail, I'm keeping the same forecasted district GMP contingency. There are still a couple change order pricing out there that we're just trying to button up with some last minute things. So that they're doing on T&M. The district project contingency, still that the difference in the current and the forecast there, same as last month, is just forecasting those CTE costs potentially coming out of that. Other than that, substantial completion dates, getting real close here. Fitness and Wellness Center, the contractual date or the date the schedule is showing is 12/28. You will see over here the city TCO inspection. I actually did not hear from them how that went the end of last week. So that will, between that and the punch list we're going to do on Wednesday, will actually technically trigger that substantial completion, but we'll still be waiting on the state fire marshal. So anyway, good, in a great position for that. Weather days, kind of irrelevant at this point because we're on schedule, so will not impact contractually the project schedule in any way. Key deliverables and inspections. The functional commissioning report we were supposed to get on Friday. I haven't seen that come through my email yet, but I know they were wrapping that up. Just kind of chasing down one pesky issue with an exhaust fan. The clear story and all the clear story and single story area of the building, we're doing a punch list on that Wednesday morning. So the only thing we won't have done is the gym itself, since we cannot get on the floor right now due to the dry time. So we'll come back and do that at the end of the year. That floor opens up for foot traffic on Christmas if anybody wants to come out and check it out. TCO inspection, like I said, I know they were here. I have not gotten an update from McCown Gordon on that. State Fire Marshal final inspection. So I do have this marked as yellow. We talked about this in the OAC meeting with McCown Gordon last week, that they are struggling to get a response out of the state to schedule that final fire inspection.
It was today.
The state fire marshal came today? Oh,
We lined that up.
okay. Nobody told me.
Yeah.
Good to know.
He was here at 11. Well, I didn't meet him, but
Okay. All right, so we'll get a report on that. They were struggling as of Friday to get a hold
Right.
of them, so awesome. Good news. Other key milestone dates. Obviously, this list is pretty short. The T sign I could not see it tonight to see if it was going up or not. It
Yeah.
was supposed to start going up tomorrow. And then owner FF&E, we're having a pre-delivery walkthrough with Scott Rice on Friday, and they will be here the week of the 20th to do that install prior to the Christmas holiday. Safety, been a fantastic job safety-wise. I mean, obviously they're just painting and touch-up finishes right now, so that has been a really good process throughout the project on McCown Gordon's part. All right, just a few things here. Like I said, punch list warranty, final closeout. We did do a 11-month warranty walkthrough on the Learning Center building, and there were no major items, a few little hardware things, and a question about some lighting controls. There's still one outstanding warranty item with the function of a piece of kitchen equipment, but we talk about it at OAC pretty much every week, so it's going. We would, like I said, be doing the punch list, and owner training schedule is being worked through. Most of it is going to be the first week of January, when most of the staff is more available. Luckily, most of the systems outside of the gym itself are pretty similar to what they were trained on in the Learning Center, so should be pretty straightforward. FF&E going to start moving some equipment into the area to get final hookups, and as I said, the furniture delivery is coming. CTE classroom improvement, project bidding, and FF&E conversation here, so switching gears a little bit. So there will be some discussion on the agenda tonight regarding the bidding process for the CTE. So you want to table that until the action item, or you want me to kind of talk
Yeah,
through that now?
let's walk through that at the action item.
Okay. So classroom FF&E, as Jim said at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to table the review of the furniture bid. They were running down some last minute pricing. I did confirm with them that we'll get the bid here in the next day or two. If we pushing it off to approval at the January meeting, the price will not increase. They're able to hold it at least through that first week of January. So we'll take some extra time to go through and make sure it's accurate before asking you guys to approve it.
Does that need to be approved prior to their next meeting?
No, it's okay. They said the price that they give us here tomorrow will not change. That was the whole reason we were trying to get it done this month, was to not be impacted by January price increases, but they were able to confirm that they're able to hold their price through the first part of January. So,
Yeah, you said first week.
oh, sorry, second week of January.
Yep.
And then project design enhancements. Been just talking a little bit more about the fence, and I think we need to we need to look at just confirming some gate locations and access for ticketing that Mr. Feldkamp brought up. So need to get through that before kind of button up things to get some bids on that fence work. So still hoping that that can be accomplished by the February board meeting. We'll see what kind of responsiveness we get when everybody comes back in January after the holiday. Other than that, just had a couple pictures in here. I was able to sneak my head into the gym the other day, so it's looking really, really nice and crisp with that floor cleaned up. The choir room, polished concrete, and all the sound panels are in. And then
I like that nice, crisp, clean reflection on that concrete.
Yeah,
It's nice.
yeah. No, that room looks really good. And then they've got the red paneling up on the concession stand, which looks really cool. This picture was taken before they took all the floor protection off, but now it's off too, and looks really nice. So, change order logs attached. It's 3 pages long. If you have any questions, there were only two new ones this month that were pretty minor. Any other questions? All right. I'll be back shortly.
I know we got action items and things, but, and we're not quite done with you, but
Yeah.
I see the light, and I thank you for your time, and not really certain how we'd do a project like this if we wouldn't have your assistance and monthly reporting, so
Well, thank you. It's
hopefully I think I might speak for everybody, or generally to some degree. Sure made
Jim.
sleeping a lot easier when you're in this role.
No, I've really enjoyed it, and I was just telling Cody earlier, I interviewed with you all in December of 19, so here we are 3 years later, so kind of crazy, but it's looking great, and I've been proud to be a part of it, so I thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, motion carried unanimously. All right, patron comments. I take it we have none. And that will put us into reports. Lauren?
Okay. I handed out a preliminary agenda, a sort, for the open house on January 16th. We'll probably tweak it a little here and there, but for the most part, it's probably 90% complete. It's the first night of the invitational tournament, and I've been working with Kaya on some neat things that we're going to do that night, and a lot of the major vendors are providing some raffle prizes for that evening, and so we're working together on it, but we should have this all finalized after the first of the year is what I'm guessing. But it looks good, and we're excited to have the open house. Actually, the new gym will be used the week before for a wrestling tournament. Is that on the 10th? Can't remember. I think it might be. But anyway, so really the first break-in is a dual wrestling tournament with St. Pius. So anyway, they'll get to use it.
Quiet opening.
Quite open. It'd be exciting for us. I did mention this, but I've been contacted a couple times by Janet Klaczynski. She would like for me to come up and meet with her, and she has some demographics on just the growth of the Tonganoxie over the last 10 years, and she has some suggestions on maybe some redistricting we should look at, rebounding based on population growth of each board district. I haven't, we may try to get that meeting in yet before Christmas, but I've been in contact with her, so I'm going to go up to Leavenworth and visit with her, and she's going to provide some information. I'll bring that back for the board.
Our boundaries in our board policy don't make any sense. The city's outgrown
Yeah.
all those limits.
And that's kind of the case she mentioned. Baser, us, we're probably the two prime examples of. So she reached out to us to suggest that we take a hard look at it.
What's the timing on that? I mean, how long does that process take?
I got to learn more about it. I've never been through it, and so she's going to.
I don't think anybody here has for a long time. If you look at it.
So I haven't. I hear other schools talk about it, but I've never experienced it. So
Yeah.
she's going to educate me, I think, on
Okay.
her
Yeah.
on her recommendation.
I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I don't think Lansing has. I think everyone's at law. There's some. Just watching that, they're all at law. I don't.
Well, she even recommended on the phone. She said there is the option of going at large in every one of our 7.
I mean, I think that would be interesting to understand that.
It would be
maybe
interesting
something
to
from KSB what that does.
I don't know.
why we actually have it.
Or even why a
Town,
school
country.
like that, like Lansing, did it? Did it have the benefits they thought it would, or was there any unforeseen downsides to it?
I don't know.
That would be interesting to know. To talk to.
I'm going to find out.
Okay.
And thank you. I had 3 volunteers to meet with me Wednesday at 5:30 to talk about the recommendation from the Kansas State Board of Education on the mascots, and so we're going to meet and talk about it. And so I appreciate Stephanie, Drew, and Justin coming in and meeting with Tanya and I that Wednesday evening. The rec commission, everything is signed, and I know that I've met with Brad a couple of times. They haven't started moving anything in, but they did the room that they're using. They call it the classroom for some of their adult classes that they're going to have during the day and in the evening. It's been repainted, and we used some of the vinyl flooring that was in here, and they had somebody put that down. It looks nice. So it's the first room past the double doors, and that's what they call it, the classroom. And I'm impressed, and they had a lot of volunteer work doing that. On the utility vehicle, I brought this up a month or so ago. I'm just on the hunt for trying to find something small that the band can use to replace the golf cart, and I'd also like to get a small rubber tire, a small one, like something you see at Orscheln's or Home Depot, just a small one that they can pull in parades, and they also use to haul equipment back and forth to games and practices. Because they have this, I don't know if you've seen it, it's a little cart. It's on hard little tires, and it bounces as it goes down the road. We can do better. I'm thinking of trying to find something, if you're familiar with like a Polaris 570, they're 44 horse. That's the smallest Polaris with a dump bed on the, utility bed on the back. I looked at, like at Cabela's, they have trackers, and Orscheln's, I'm not sure of the brand. It's I think Korean. They're 13 horsepower. I mean, they look nice, but there's not a lot. I mean, they're pretty small, and there's not a big price difference between a 13 horse and a 44 horse like Polaris. So I think the Polaris would last longer, or a Kawasaki. It didn't have to be Polaris, but something a little bigger. And so it'll be probably in that 12 to 13 range. And I'm just on the hunt for it. And I'll keep you guys addressed on that. And I am working, after the first year, I'll be working on all the coordinators, evaluations. And just wanted you to know that that's kind of next on my to-do list. And then this last January board meeting has changed because of presentations we didn't have tonight. So I have CTE renovation, which that is still a topic, the TES playground, the visiting bleachers project will be in January, and then Aaron will talk about the fence for January or February. I'm not sure which month that comes in. There you are. Thank you.
Laura,
Anything for Lauren?
so on this utility vehicle for the
Mhm.
band, I thought we bought a John Deere Gator recently.
We bought
and
that,
It was going
yes.
to be dual purpose.
We're trying to do that. That was my first intent. That's good. I know that the plan is for the maintenance to use it, not for spraying, but I know that Jim and, I don't know if you know Jim, but we had that little silver van that they run around, little Dodge van. I know Mitch would like to see if we could run around with the utility vehicle, and I might, if I can revisit that, but my plan was to share the Gator with everybody. I'm just trying to figure out how that'll all work. Padfield is keeping his little Gator because he has it all rigged out with all his gear, and he wants to keep it pretty clean. What are your thoughts on that?
I was just asking the question.
We're going to need that Gator a lot. It's just a matter of sharing it back and forth, is what I would guess.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Lauren? If not, we'll move on to Tanya.
All right. Well, we had the alternative high school program presentation, and we will address your questions and comments as we come back to that at the January meeting. You'll see in my Tanya's topics, these are all items that have been covered, but we continue with our English Language Arts Adoption Committee. We've set up a meeting as we come back to school in January to kind of weed through some of the other samples. We've got 2 additional samples that we're really interested in that arrived late last week. So folks are coming to pick those up and looking through those along with the rubrics that we have. Our PLC training, we had our next steps in our PLC training December 6th and 7th. We had our consultant come back and work with each of our building leadership teams separately. So we had the elementary group during the morning on the 6th, and then we had the high school group come in the afternoon of the 6th. Middle school came the morning of the 7th, and then we had a debrief with our admin team, and then I met with our consultant following that to kind of put together our next steps beyond what we'll do with the information that we learned, and then involving the rest of our building team members. So that went really well, and we're really excited about that. Accreditation, we kind of touched on that tonight. We are almost at the end of this 5-year cycle, so we are submitting the report. We have to submit that 30 days prior to our visit, and our visit is January 25th, so we'll be submitting it this Friday, the 16th. We'll give our presentation to the board at our special meeting, and I believe we have that tentatively scheduled for January 11th. And that is the same data presentation with a few other areas that we will present to our visiting team on January 25th for our accreditation. And then following that, the ARC, which is the Accreditation Review Council, will review our report and the report from our outside visitation team, and they will determine our accreditation status. And we'll be notified of that. There's a timeline on that. We will likely not be notified till May, I believe. They have a long process that they go through, and it's usually a month in between each step. So even though we'll have our visit in January, we won't be notified till probably May. And then in between that time, since we'll finish our visit on the 25th, we will automatically go ahead and start working on our next cycle. So we will have some plans in place to do some surveys, and we're going to work on that with our mission, vision, goal setting. We're taking the information that the Board of Education worked on in June at the retreat, and then we're going to combine that with our data that we get from our surveys, and then we'll move forward with our year 1 of our next accreditation cycle. All right, and then we have had our calendar meetings. We've had 2 meetings, and we're currently soliciting input from staff. The calendar committee came up with 3 draft calendars. We initially had 4 drafts, and then we went back and reformatted into 3 drafts for the 23-24 school year. The survey will close Wednesday evening, and then we will gather their input, look over the information, and we'll be meeting as soon as we come back in January to put some information together. And the calendar committee representatives will come to the Board of Education with their proposed calendar at the January meeting.
I have a couple of questions. For the accreditation, when you said that the board met and we discussed the goals and stuff, is there a way to like send that back to us? I mean, I remember kind of what we talked about, but I'd like to like revisit it before.
With the primary,
Yeah, like what
we have that.
Yes, we have that, and we're using that as part of our guide too, as we look through.
I would just like to be refreshed, I
Yes.
guess,
Yes.
like what we
No,
had
it's
all
been a while.
determined. Right, it's been a while since then, and so
And there was some back and forth. I don't know if we were copied in on that or not. I mean, that was a while.
It's
was
been,
a while
no,
ago.
I mean, Becky and Tanya and I are gonna be working on those.
Yes, Becky Nazelrode has been very instrumental in this, and we're kind of slow playing it because of the accreditation cycle. We want all of this to coincide, so our next accreditation cycle will be a 5-year cycle, and we want to go with the board recommendation and put that together with our staff input and move forward with the mission, vision, goals. But yes, when we come to talk about that, we're going to loop that all back in together, show the board's input, show our input as we move forward. And we're not going to come and say,
Maybe
here we go, this
before,
is it.
like it'd be nice for the board to maybe revisit it before you
Yeah.
to make sure that's still where everybody's at.
Yes.
We'll talk about that
Yes,
tomorrow.
and that's part of the process too that we're going through. We're going back through some things, but we have slow played it on purpose so that we can all move forward at the same time. We didn't want to start with new goals right in the middle of our accreditation cycle, and then
That's kind of where I'm going, because we talked about that at times where we were like, oh, we'd like that to be a goal, and then you said, well, we have to wait for the accreditation process to kind of begin again. So that's why I think everybody should probably just be clear on what those, like what we had all determined
Yes.
before
We'll
we
talk
moved
about
through
it.
yes,
that.
we had plans to do that.
What's the timing of that? I mean,
Timing
to
of
send that out to you said you're slow playing it. Is a
No,
slow
we
playing
could,
it like-
if to revisit it, just to refresh everybody, we can get that out this week.
Yeah, but what about like setting the goals and stuff? Is that like something next couple months? Is that like 6
No.
months, a year? What is that?
Well, we have to wait till after the January 25th visit,
Okay.
and then
February.
we have some different avenues of surveys and things that we can look. We haven't decided which ones we specifically want to go with. That will help lead not only our staff but our students, our community through putting together their focus for where they see us going in the future. So we want to make sure we have all of that in line together before we then go forward and establish everything. So it's going to be, there'll be a lot of work going on this spring
Yeah,
toward
we're
that.
gonna turn our attention to it real quick here. We know it's been a while.
So this spring, okay.
Yes.
And then curriculum adoption. So I guess how does that? You guys get samples, or is there anybody who's actually giving it a trial run? Are you going and watching any other school districts that are currently using that curriculum? How is that working?
We have a team put together, those folks who are serving on our adoption committee, and we've met a couple of times. We have different rubrics that we are using. One is a general rubric just to look at the materials overall, and then the other rubric is really geared toward the science of reading. And so we're taking a look at both of those. We have ordered all kinds of samples, and what we're doing in this initial phase is just doing a high-level review of all of them. And then when we come to meet in January, we'll be discussing how that review's going. We'll get rid of those samples that really are not needing to be in the process, and then we'll start to narrow our focus. And as we do that, if we see a couple front runners initially, we'll go ahead and schedule some visits at other schools who are using those programs. I already have a couple. I had sent out over the curriculum leaders listserv and asked what folks were using and which schools would be open to visits. So I have all that ready and prepared for our team. And a lot of them are really interested in going out and seeing some of these programs in action because some are very different than what they're used to.
So is it an adoption K through 12? Is K through
Yes.
5 looking at the same thing and 6 through 12 looking at something different? Like, how does that work?
The adoption will be K through 12, but we will not necessarily be adopting the same things. Like some programs are specifically geared to K through 5 only, and those are really heavily focused on the science of reading. 6 through 8 is kind of a combo. There's some science of reading materials within that, but really the science of reading is more of like learning to read instead of reading to learn. And then our upper level high school programs will be more of your traditional, but so we may not adopt the same program K through 12,
but they will be coherent because that's part of our process and what we're looking at. We will be going to visit some programs, and then based on what we see out there, you know, we'll narrow our focus again, and we have the option of bringing in some reps to do some demos also. So we have quite a few things going on this spring that we're going to be pretty busy on as we're getting through the adoption process.
I would encourage you as you look through that, that K through 2 area, only focusing on phonics is not a good thing, that you need to focus on phonics, vocabulary, and comprehension, and
Yes.
make sure that it's a well-equipped program to teach not only how to read, but how to understand what you're reading too.
Yes, and we have some pretty thorough rubrics that we have for review, so we're covering all our bases on that.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move into the action items. 5.2 was dropped from the agenda. 5.1, this is the alternative delivery method. I don't know, Lauren or
It's gonna be
Aaron, you
Aaron.
want
Why
to
don't you
kind of
step on
explain what the process is here? And outside the meeting, Drew kind of raised some of the legal requirements of the law. Just want to make sure we're all kind of covered on that.
Yeah, so, you know, in consultation with KSB, you know, looking back at the bidding processes, so there's the traditional design bid build process that is outlined in there, and then there's the option for the board to elect to use an alternative delivery method, which is essentially the CM at risk or general contractor that you all used for the main bond project. So there's certain things that the statute asks the board to consider in electing to use that alternative method, and how they benefit the community and the project and the district. So I think that's what the action item is tonight, is for the board to have that that discussion, and I'm, you know, happy to support it.
So,
Yeah.
so for everybody, the options. So option A is
It is your traditional sealed bid process, where we do already have the project designed, but it's you know, a public invitation, sealed bid opening, and I'm not an expert on the statute, so I don't want to get into it too much, but that's essentially what it is. And then the alternative method, which the board utilized for the bond project, allows a 2-part qualification process where you put out an RFQ publicly to everybody. Anybody can respond to it. You evaluate those based on qualifications for the project with a set matrix for evaluation, and then you select your select bidders list, and then you send out an RFP to them, which includes the state form for certain fee aspects. In this case, we would also send to them the actual design documents for the project and ask them to go ahead and bid those out at the same time, since we have that done. So it's that 2-part process that allows you to evaluate additional qualifications beyond the hard bid process, and allows a little more flexibility in the negotiation of the.
So you talked a little
bids.
bit with me about the timeline and how to keep this on track for May. Is there advantage, disadvantage?
In the bidding process, there's not really an advantage or a disadvantage. They can both be accomplished in pretty much the same timeline. What it does do is post bid. It allows potentially a little bit quicker contract negotiation timeline. The whole reason we're asked the board to approve this project so early was just because of lead times of materials and trying to get everything secured prior to starting construction this summer. So there's potentially some advantages in the timeline for getting their contract awarded and getting materials ordered. If the bids were to come in higher than budget, or higher than we have been talking about, and there needs to be some value engineering or scope reduction, the alternative delivery method makes that a quicker turnaround to be able to negotiate some changes in that scope while still moving forward with the critical items that need to be procured early. So
you can still competitively bid it, but there's additional, now there's a qualifications component that could be added to it,
yes,
to the selection process.
yes.
Okay.
Is this what we did with the original bond? Is that what I heard? Did I misunderstand what you said?
No, you my understanding, I wasn't around then, but is
I can't.
this is the statute that you all used to
Okay.
hire the CM at risk for
Okay.
the bond
Okay.
project.
Right.
So that they could
So
be
we're
involved
following
in
basically
pre-con
the same
and stuff.
process for a smaller piece of the project.
Yes.
That's what KSB, we checked with KSB, and that's what they recommended.
The one of the requirements is it doesn't facilitate favoritism. Doing the alternative. So to me, you address that by having a clearly communicated rubric for how you're selecting, how much is based upon price, how much is it based upon experience, other qualifications.
Yeah.
And if we have that, then I think that addresses those requirements related to being transparent and fair.
Yeah, and the statute does outline certain requirements for that rubric.
Right.
For you to submit, you have to submit it with the RFQ showing how it's going to be scored, and certain scoring sections are limited to certain percentages and stuff
Right.
like that. So yeah.
So you're good with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in my opinion, it's in the public's interest to have qualified people, just not the low bid. I mean, you want a best value selection.
Yeah, and you're able to have more control over the back end schedule, I think. Just being able to negotiate kind of early and make sure
You're still looking at price, but it's not the sole driver yet.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I also believe in having a few conversations with industry partners this past week. I believe you'll get more interest from going the CM at risk alternative delivery method than you will the hard bid in this current market climate. It's really hard. I don't know if you've seen the same thing, Drew, but it's been hard to get hard bids on certain projects recently. So.
If I hadn't, I wouldn't tell you where I was finding the.
Any other questions for Aaron on this? I'd entertain a motion on item 5.1.
For the verbiage, this is for the CM at rate.
CTE building alternative delivery.
Yeah, I was just turning my computer back on it. I move that we approve the CTE bidding alternative delivery method to CM at risk.
Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried. All right.
Thank you.
Like I said, 5.2 was tabled. That just gets us to the approval of the band AV purchase. I think we had a pretty lengthy discussion. I don't know if there's any other questions, comments. If not, I'd entertain a motion on item 5.3.
I'll make a motion to approve item 5.3.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, motion carried. All right. You want the
Just briefly.
item 6.
The KSB December board policy updates are there for your review, and it's a much shorter one this time, but there are a couple of them on there that we need to take a look at, and probably I still think, Drew, if you wouldn't mind working with me on it, it's the best way to do it is probably just to meet face to face and just walk through them.
Yeah, I've already read through them. I didn't see really anything.
The only one I had was display in the classroom.
Yeah.
I think that's just, we got to talk about that. Maybe.
Okay.
That was
Yeah.
it.
So this will be on the action item.
This will be
agenda
action
for,
item in January. I'm pretty sure we
so
can come to a consensus pretty quickly on it.
If anybody reads that and has any questions, concerns, get that to Lauren. We have a couple items for executive session. I don't think it'll be too lengthy, but do we need a little break? All right. How about we convene for executive session at 8 p.m. Invite Lauren in with the board and to discuss
Personnel.
I hate these things. Why did my must be the first one. To protect the privacy interest, discuss non-elected personnel matters, and to protect the privacy interests of an identified individual. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. All right.
If you want to use
right, we'll call it back into session after executive session. No actions out of executive session this evening. Upcoming dates, we got January special board meeting, and Lauren provided that detail on the basketball tournament and the gym kickoff. Other than that, we'll be at a meeting in January. I think we have a full agenda.
Hold.
Yeah.
I got one thing.
Yes.
I volunteered at the Wamego, at the basketball game where we played Wamego, at the after prom table, and I just want, would it be possible to send a note to the Wamego superintendent or principal, because their fans, their kids, they were great. I mean, they were so polite, and we had actually more parents from Wamego walk up and just say, "Hey, I don't want any cookies. I'm just giving you money," than we did Tongville. It blew me away.
They're excited about coming back to our tournament. Well, not only because
Well,
they
yeah,
have
'cause-
good girls team,
Oh, really? That's shocking.
but no, they're excited about coming back.
I'm sure
Well, they were just.
We're so excited.
I hope our people.
I will.
behave that way
I
when
will.
we drill.
He's a
That
good
was
guy.
great. That's all.
No, I think some of us, I didn't judge debate, but there was a lot of kids here at debate over the weekend. We got regional debate this weekend. Had a coworker volunteered to judge and was pretty impressed with the new school. So anyway,
I saw you pull in.
yes, great young man volunteered to judge, so I didn't have to. But anyway, all right. With that, I move we adjourn.